The contract marriage was supposed to last exactly 1 year. No emotions, no complications, no falling in love. But as Maya Robinson stood in the marble foyer of Leo Kang's Beacon Hill penthouse, watching him pace like a caged predator while barking orders in rapid Korean into his phone, she realized the rules had already been shattered. "You think you can just walk away?" His voice cut through the silence as he ended the call, dark eyes blazing with something far more dangerous than anger. "After what we've shared?" Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. The divorce papers trembled in her hands. This was business, Leo, nothing more. He moved toward her with that fluid grace that had first caught her attention 8 months ago, when desperation had driven her to accept his impossible proposal. Now the same man who had promised her a cold, emotionless arrangement stood before her, his carefully constructed walls crumbling. "Business?" Leo's laugh was bitter, broken. "Then explain why I can't breathe when you're not here. Explain why I'd burn down half of Boston before I let another man touch you." The papers slipped from her fingers, scattering across the marble floor like fallen dreams. "Welcome to Korean Mafia lovers. Hello everyone. Please drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. We need your support to keep creating these emotional stories." 6 months earlier, Maya Robinson had learned that desperation could make even the most impossible decisions seem reasonable. She stood outside the gleaming glass tower that housed Kang Enterprises in Boston's financial district, clutching the business card that had somehow found its way into her hands through a chain of whispered conversations and desperate recommendations. The October wind whipped through her natural curls, and she pulled her worn coat tighter around her shoulders, acutely aware of how out of place she looked among the designer-clad professionals streaming past. Contractual marriage arrangement, substantial compensation, discretion required. The words on the card seemed to mock her now. 6 months ago, if someone had told her she'd be considering a fake marriage to a stranger, she would have laughed. But that was before her grandmother's stage 4 pancreatic cancer diagnosis, before the experimental treatment that insurance wouldn't cover, before the second mortgage on their family home in Roxbury that was about to default. "You sure about this, baby girl?" Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory from that morning. Evelyn Robinson had always been her anchor, the woman who'd raised her alone after her parents died in a car accident when Maya was 12. Now, weakened by chemotherapy but still fierce, she'd looked at her granddaughter with knowing eyes. "I won't have you sacrificing yourself for me." But it wasn't sacrifice, Maya had insisted. It was survival. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt endless. Maya checked her reflection in the polished steel doors, smoothing down her pencil skirt and adjusting the blazer she'd borrowed from her friend Keisha. She'd spent her last $50 on professional makeup, determined to look the part even if she felt like a fraud. The receptionist, a perfectly polished woman with ice blue eyes, looked her up and down with barely concealed disdain. "Mr. Kang is very busy. Are you certain you have an appointment?" "Yes," Maya replied, lifting her chin. She'd learned long ago not to let anyone's judgment diminish her worth. Maya Robinson, 2 o'clock. The wait felt eternal. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Boston sprawled below like a maze of old brick and gleaming steel. Somewhere in that maze was Massachusetts General Hospital, where her grandmother was probably pretending to feel stronger than she was, and the house in Roxbury that held every memory of Maya's childhood. "Mr. Kang will see you now." The office was a study in controlled power, minimalist furniture, abstract art that probably cost more than most people's annual salaries, and behind an imposing mahogany desk, the man himself. Leo Kang was younger than she'd expected, perhaps 35, with the kind of sharp, angular features that belonged on magazine covers. His black hair was perfectly styled, his charcoal suit impeccably tailored. But it was his eyes that caught her, dark, intelligent, and completely unreadable. He didn't look up from his tablet immediately, a power play she recognized. When he finally did, his gaze swept over her with clinical assessment. "Ms. Robinson." His voice carried the faintest trace of an accent, cultured and controlled. "Please sit." Maya settled into the leather chair across from his desk, keeping her spine straight despite the way her heart was racing. "Mr. Kang, you understand the nature of this arrangement." He set down his tablet, giving her his full attention. This is not a romantic entanglement. It's a business transaction. I understand. Her voice was steadier than she felt. 1 year of marriage for immigration purposes, in exchange for $200,000. He named the sum without blinking. Paid in installments, $50,000 upon signing, $50,000 at 6 months, and the remainder upon completion of the contract. The number hit her like a physical blow. It was more money than she'd ever imagined having, enough to save her grandmother, their house, their future. There would be conditions. Leo continued, his tone as businesslike as if they were discussing stock options. You would move into my penthouse, attend certain social functions as my wife, maintain the appearance of a committed relationship in public. And in private? Something flickered in his dark eyes. In private, we are strangers who happen to share living space, separate bedrooms, separate lives. No emotional entanglements. Maya studied his face, searching for any hint of the man beneath the corporate mask. Why me? You could have anyone. I need someone. Authentic. Someone who won't develop inconvenient attachments. His smile was cold, practiced. Your background check suggests you're practical, focused on family obligations rather than romantic fantasies. The clinical way he spoke about her life, as if she were a commodity to be evaluated, should have offended her. Instead, it clarified the situation perfectly. This wasn't about her as a person. It was about her as a solution to his problem. What's your real reason for needing a wife? Maya asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Leo's expression didn't change, but she caught the slight tightening around his eyes. My father's will requires that I be married to inherit certain family businesses, American businesses that require an American spouse for legitimacy. There was more to it. She could sense the layers of truth he wasn't sharing. But Maya had her own secrets, her own desperate reasons for being here. The money, she said quietly. When would I receive the first payment? Upon signing the marriage certificate. The ceremony would be small, private. A judge, 2 witnesses. Maya closed her eyes, thinking of her grandmother's frail hands, the way she tried to hide her pain during the treatments that were draining their savings account. When she opened them, Leo was watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. I need to think about it. You have until tomorrow morning. After that, I'll find someone else. The dismissal was clear, but as Maya stood to leave, Leo spoke again. Ms. Robinson. She turned back. This arrangement will require you to attend high society events, interact with influential people. Are you prepared for that level of a performance? Maya straightened her shoulders, drawing on the strength that had carried her through years of working multiple jobs while earning her nursing degree. Mr. Kang, I've been performing my whole life. The only difference is that this time I'll be getting paid for it. For the first time since she'd entered his office, Leo's mask slipped slightly. The corner of his mouth twitched in what might have been approval. Good. I'll expect your answer by 9 a.m. Maya walked out of that office knowing she'd already made her decision. As the elevator descended toward the street level, she pulled out her phone and called her grandmother. Grandma, it's me. I think I found a way to get you that treatment. That night, Maya sat at her grandmother's bedside in their small Roxbury home, watching the woman who'd sacrificed everything for her sleep fitfully. The house was quiet except for the old radiator's familiar hissing and the distant sound of traffic on Blue Hill Avenue. She thought about Leo Kang's cold, calculating gaze, the way he'd spoken about their arrangement, as if emotions were inconvenient complications to be avoided. Maybe that was exactly what she needed, a transaction so clinical that there was no risk of her heart getting involved. Maya had learned early that love was a luxury she couldn't afford. She'd watched her grandmother work double shifts as a hospital cleaner to keep them afloat, had seen what happened when people let their hearts rule their heads. This marriage contract was different. It was practical, temporary, and most importantly, it would save the only family she had left. At 8:30 the next morning, Maya called Leo Kang's office. I'll do it, she said simply. Excellent. My driver will pick you up at noon for the courthouse. The line went dead, and Maya stared at her phone, wondering if she'd just made the best decision of her life or the worst. The courthouse wedding was exactly as sterile as Maya had expected. Judge Martinez, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, performed the ceremony with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. Leo's lawyer and assistant served as witnesses, both maintaining professional expressions that revealed nothing. Maya wore her only good dress, a simple navy sheath that Keisha had helped her pick out years ago for job interviews. Leo stood beside her in an impeccably tailored grey suit, his expression as unreadable as it had been in his office. When Judge Martinez asked if they took each other as husband and wife, their I do's sounded more like business confirmations than wedding vows. The ring Leo slipped onto her finger was stunning, a simple platinum band with a diamond that caught the fluorescent courthouse lighting. Maya tried not to think about how much it probably cost, or how temporary its presence on her hand would be. "You may kiss the bride," Judge Martinez announced with bureaucratic cheer. Leo turned to Maya, his dark eyes meeting hers for a brief moment. The kiss was quick, perfunctory, a brush of lips that lasted barely 3 seconds. But even that brief contact sent an unexpected jolt through Maya's system, a warmth that had nothing to do with the courthouse's overheated air. "Congratulations," the judge said, handing them their marriage certificate. "May you have a long and happy union." Maya almost laughed at the irony. 30 minutes later, Maya found herself in the back of Leo's Mercedes, watching Boston's familiar neighborhoods blur past as they headed toward Beacon Hill. The driver, a silent man named Chen, navigated the afternoon traffic with practiced ease while Leo worked on his phone, fingers flying across the screen as he responded to what seemed like an endless stream of messages. "Second thoughts?" Leo asked without looking up, as if he could sense her nervousness. "No," Maya replied, though her stomach was churning. "Just processing. The penthouse has a guest room that's been prepared for you. Mrs. Chen, Chen's wife, handles the household management. She'll help you settle in." The clinical way he discussed their living arrangements reinforced the business nature of their relationship. Maya nodded, watching as they entered Beacon Hill's narrow cobblestone streets lined with historic brownstones and gas lamps. Leo's building was a converted 19th century mansion, all red brick and elegant proportions. The doorman greeted Leo with respectful deference, his eyes curious but professionally blank as they took in Maya. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor, and Maya tried not to gawk as Leo led her through rooms that belonged in architectural magazines. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Boston Common and the Charles River. The furniture was modern but warm, expensive but not ostentatious. "Your room," Leo said, opening a door to reveal a space larger than Maya's entire apartment. The bedroom was decorated in soft greys and whites, with its own sitting area and a bathroom that featured a marble soaking tub. "It's beautiful," Maya said, meaning it. Mrs. Chen stocked the closet with some basics. "If you need anything else, let her know." Leo's tone remained businesslike, but Maya caught him watching her reaction to the room. "Dinner is at 7. We'll discuss the schedule for upcoming events." He started to leave, then paused at the doorway. "Maya." It was the first time he'd used her first name, and something in his voice made her look up. "This arrangement works only if we both maintain appropriate boundaries. I trust that won't be a problem." "Of course not," Maya replied, lifting her chin slightly. "This is business, remember?" Something flickered in Leo's eyes. Approval, perhaps, or maybe something else entirely. "Good. I'll see you at dinner." Alone in the luxurious room, Maya sank onto the king-sized bed and called her grandmother. "How did it go, baby girl?" Evelyn's voice was weak but warm. "It's done, Grandma. I'm married." The word felt strange on her tongue. "And how's your husband?" Maya thought about Leo's cold efficiency, his clinical approach to their arrangement. "He's practical, like me." Evelyn's tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. "Just remember, baby girl, sometimes the most guarded hearts are the ones that love the deepest when they finally let someone in." "This isn't about love, Grandma. It's about getting you the treatment you need." "I know, sweetheart, but a year is a long time to live with someone. People change, hearts change. After hanging up, Maya unpacked her few belongings, feeling like an imposter in the elegant space. The clothes Mrs. Chen had provided were beautiful, designer pieces in Maya's exact size that must have cost more than she made in 6 months. Everything from casual wear to formal gowns, all perfectly coordinated. At 7 sharp, Maya made her way to the dining room, where Leo was already seated at a table that could have accommodated 12 people. He'd changed into dark jeans and a black sweater that made him look younger, more approachable, though his expression remained guarded. "How's the room?" he asked as she took the seat across from him. "Perfect, thank you." Maya accepted a glass of wine from Mrs. Chen, a kind-faced woman in her 60s who moved with quiet efficiency. "We have several events coming up," Leo said, pulling out his phone to check his calendar. "The Harvard Medical Center fundraiser next Friday, a business dinner the following Tuesday. My lawyer will brief you on the background stories we'll need to maintain." Background stories? How we met, how long we've been together, why we decided to marry. Leo's tone was matter-of-fact. "The details need to be consistent," Maya nodded, taking a sip of wine that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. "What's our story?" "We met at a charity event 6 months ago. You were working as a volunteer coordinator. I was a donor. We connected over our shared commitment to healthcare initiatives." Leo paused, studying her face. "It's close enough to the truth to be believable." "And we fell in love." Maya couldn't keep the slight irony out of her voice. "Apparently." Leo's smile was sardonic. "Though we'll keep the displays of affection minimal. I'm not known for public demonstrations of emotion." As they ate dinner, an expertly prepared salmon that melted on Maya's tongue, Leo outlined the expectations for their public appearances. She would need to learn about his business interests, his social circle, his preferences. In return, he would learn enough about her background to answer basic questions. "One more thing," Leo said as they finished the meal. "My business associates can be intense. Some of them have traditional views about marriage and family. If anyone asks about children or our future plans, deflect politely." Maya sensed there was more behind his warning, layers of complexity he wasn't sharing, but she nodded agreement. Understood. As she prepared for bed that night in her luxurious new room, Maya caught herself wondering about the man she'd married. Leo Kang was clearly successful, obviously intelligent and undeniably attractive. But there was something guarded about him, a careful control that suggested deep waters beneath the polished surface. She thought about her grandmother's words, about guarded hearts loving the deepest. But Maya couldn't afford to think like that. This was a business arrangement, nothing more. In 12 months, she'd walk away with enough money to secure her grandmother's treatment and their future, and Leo would have whatever legitimacy he needed for his mysterious business dealings. It was a perfect plan, as long as neither of them was foolish enough to develop feelings. Maya fell asleep in Egyptian cotton sheets, trying not to think about how Leo's brief kiss had made her feel, or why she kept replaying the moment when he'd said her name. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Maya was beginning to understand the careful choreography of Leo's world. She'd attended 2 business dinners and a gallery opening, playing the role of devoted wife with an ease that surprised them both. Leo was the perfect gentleman in public, attentive without being overly affectionate, protective without being possessive. In private, they maintained their agreed-upon distance. Polite conversation over breakfast, separate schedules during the day, brief check-ins about upcoming events. It was working exactly as planned. Until the night, everything changed. Maya was in the kitchen making tea when she heard Leo's key in the front door. It was past midnight, and she'd assumed he was working late again, something about a business meeting that had kept him out since dinner. She'd learned not to ask too many questions about his work. But when Leo appeared in the kitchen doorway, Maya's breath caught. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled, his tie gone, and there was something dark on his knuckles that looked suspiciously like blood. "You're hurt," Maya said, her nursing training overriding everything else as she moved toward him. "It's nothing." Leo's voice was rougher than usual, strained. "Just a minor disagreement." Let me see. Maya reached for his hand, but Leo pulled back. I said it's nothing. And I said, let me see. Maya's tone brooked no argument. I'm a nurse, Leo. I've seen worse than whatever this is. For a moment, they stared at each other across the marble kitchen island. Then Leo slowly extended his hand, and Maya felt her heart clench at the sight of his split knuckles and bruised fingers. Sit, she ordered, guiding him to one of the bar stools. I'll get the first aid kit. As Maya cleaned his wounds with gentle efficiency, she was acutely aware of Leo's proximity, the way his dark eyes followed her movements, the subtle tension in his shoulders that suggested he wasn't used to being cared for. What happened? She asked quietly, applying antiseptic to a particularly deep cut. Business disagreement. Someone thought they could cheat me. Leo's jaw tightened. They were wrong. Maya looked up at him, seeing something in his expression that made her pulse quicken. This wasn't the controlled businessman she'd married. This was someone harder, more dangerous, someone who settled disagreements with his fists. What kind of business do you really do, Leo? The question hung between them like a challenge. Leo's eyes searched her face, as if trying to determine how much truth she could handle. The kind where reputation matters more than contracts, he said finally, where respect is earned through strength, not negotiation. Maya continued, bandaging his hand, processing his words. She'd suspected there was more to Leo's empire than legitimate business ventures, but hearing him confirm it sent a chill through her. Are you afraid? Leo asked, his voice softer now. Maya met his gaze steadily. Should I be? Not of me. Never of me. The intensity in his voice made her breath catch. But my world, it's not safe for innocent people. Good thing I'm not that innocent, Maya replied, surprising herself with her boldness. Leo's eyes darkened, and for a moment, the careful distance they'd maintained seemed to evaporate. His free hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb brushing across her skin with unexpected tenderness. Maya. Her name on his lips sounded different than it had before, less clinical, more personal. The moment was shattered by Leo's phone buzzing insistently on the counter. He pulled back, the mask sliding into place as he answered. What? His voice was sharp, all business again. When? No, I'll handle it personally. Give me 20 minutes. He ended the call and stood, the careful distance between them restored. I have to go. At this hour? Business doesn't keep regular hours. Leo paused at the kitchen doorway, looking back at her with an expression she couldn't read. Maya, what happened tonight? Stays between us, she finished. I understand. But as Leo disappeared into the night again, Maya realized she understood very little about the man she'd married, and the way her heart had raced when he'd touched her face suggested she was in far more danger than she'd bargained for. The next morning, Leo was gone before Maya woke up, leaving only a brief note about a business trip to New York. For 3 days, the penthouse felt empty without his presence, and Maya found herself missing their polite breakfast conversations more than she cared to admit. When he returned, he was back to his controlled, professional demeanor, as if the vulnerable moment in the kitchen had never happened. But Maya caught him watching her sometimes, his dark eyes holding questions he didn't voice. The shift in their dynamic became apparent at the Harvard Medical Center fundraiser. The event was held at the Four Seasons. Boston's elite gathered in glittering formal wear to support pediatric cancer research. Maya wore one of the gowns from her mysteriously well-stocked closet, a midnight blue creation that made her feel like royalty. You look beautiful, Leo said as they entered the ballroom, his hand warm on the small of her back. Thank you. Maya tried to ignore the way his compliment made her skin tingle. You clean up pretty well yourself. Leo's tuxedo was perfectly tailored, emphasizing his broad shoulders and lean frame. Several women had already given him appreciative glances, making Maya feel an unexpected stab of something that felt suspiciously like jealousy. The evening proceeded smoothly until Dr. Richard Blackwood approached their table. Maya recognized him from the hospital where she'd worked before her grandmother's illness forced her to take a leave of absence. Leo, good to see you, Dr. Blackwood said, shaking hands. And this must be your lovely wife. Maya Robinson, she said, extending her hand. Robinson, Heike, that name sounds familiar. Dr. Blackwood's brow furrowed. Didn't you work at Mass General? In the oncology ward? Maya felt Leo's attention sharpen beside her. They hadn't discussed her previous job in detail. It hadn't seemed relevant to their arrangement. I did, Maya confirmed. I took a leave of absence to care for my grandmother. Of course, I remember now. You were excellent with the patients. Very compassionate. Dr. Blackwood turned to Leo. You're lucky to have found someone who understands the medical field. Not many people can handle the emotional demands of oncology nursing. After Dr. Blackwood moved on, Leo was quiet, his expression thoughtful. You never mentioned you worked in oncology, he said finally. You never asked. Maya took a sip of champagne, trying to keep her voice light. Does it matter? It explains a lot. Leo's gaze was intense. Why you're so comfortable around illness, why you knew exactly how to treat my injuries the other night, and why I was desperate enough to marry a stranger for money, Maya added quietly. Something flickered in Leo's eyes, an emotion she couldn't identify. Maya, Mr. and Mrs. Kang, a booming voice interrupted them. Maya turned to see a large man with silver hair approaching, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Victor Petrov, I've been looking forward to meeting Leo's bride. Leo's entire demeanor changed, his body going rigid with tension. Victor, such a beautiful wife, Victor continued, his accent thick as he took Maya's hand and kissed it with old-world formality. Leo is very lucky man. Thank you, Maya replied, sensing the undercurrent of tension between the two men. You must tell me, Victor said, his grip on Maya's hand lingering uncomfortably long, how you captured heart of Boston's most eligible bachelor. Many women have tried. Leo's hand moved to Maya's waist, pulling her closer to his side. The gesture looked casual, but Maya could feel the controlled strength in his touch. I suppose I was just in the right place at the right time, Maya said diplomatically. Victor's laugh was cold. Yes, timing is everything in business, is it not, Leo? The threat in his words was subtle but unmistakable. Maya felt Leo's tension increase, his protective instincts clearly triggered. If you'll excuse us, Leo said smoothly, I promised Maya a dance. As Leo led her onto the dance floor, Maya could feel Victor's eyes following them. Who is he? She asked quietly, as Leo pulled her into his arms. Someone who doesn't understand boundaries, Leo replied, his voice tight with controlled anger. As they moved together to the slow music, Maya became acutely aware of Leo's body against hers, the way his hand spanned her waist, the subtle scent of his cologne. This was the closest they'd been since their wedding day, and the effect was intoxicating. Leo, she whispered, looking up into his dark eyes. I know, he said quietly, his voice rough with an emotion she was beginning to recognize. I know. The attack came on a Tuesday morning while Maya was visiting her grandmother at Mass General. She'd just finished updating the nurses on Evelyn's progress with the new treatment, which was showing promising results, when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your husband has made enemies. Pretty wives make excellent leverage. Maya's blood ran cold. Victor Petrov. She'd hoped never to see him again after that uncomfortable encounter at the fundraiser, but clearly he hadn't forgotten about her. Her hands shaking, Maya immediately called Leo, but it went straight to voicemail. She tried his office, but his assistant said he was in meetings all day and couldn't be disturbed. Maya, honey, what's wrong? Her grandmother's weak voice drew her attention back to the hospital bed. Nothing, Grandma, just work stuff. Maya forced a smile, not wanting to worry the woman who was finally responding well to treatment. But as Maya left the hospital an hour later, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The parking garage felt too quiet, too empty. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. She was halfway to her car when she heard footsteps behind her, too heavy, too deliberate. Maya's nursing training had taught her to stay calm in emergencies, but this was different. This was personal. Mrs. Kang. The voice was heavily accented, unfamiliar. You will come with us, please. Maya turned slowly to find two large men blocking her path to the car. They weren't pointing guns, weren't making obvious threats, but everything about their posture screamed danger. "I don't think so," Maya said, proud that her voice remained steady. "Was not request," the larger man said, stepping closer. Maya's mind raced. The parking garage was nearly empty, her phone was in her purse, and these men clearly weren't interested in negotiation. But she'd grown up in Roxbury. She knew how to handle herself in dangerous situations. "Look," she said, taking a step back toward the emergency call box she'd noticed near the elevator. "I don't know what this is about, but is about your husband's debts," the second man interrupted. "Debts that must be paid." "Then take it up with him," Maya snapped, her fear transforming into anger. "I'm not part of his business." "You became part when you married him," the first man said, reaching into his jacket. Maya didn't wait to see what he was reaching for. She spun and ran toward the emergency call box, her heels clicking against the concrete as she heard heavy footsteps pursuing her. She'd almost reached the box when strong hands grabbed her arms, spinning her around. Maya fought back instinctively, using every self-defense technique she'd learned growing up in a rough neighborhood. "Let go of me." She drove her elbow into one man's ribs, earning a grunt of pain. "Enough." The larger man's patience had clearly run out. "You come now, or we make this difficult." That's when Maya heard the screech of tires echoing through the garage. A black SUV rounded the corner at dangerous speed, followed by two more vehicles. The men holding Maya cursed in what sounded like Russian, their grip on her arms tightening. The lead SUV skidded to a stop 20 feet away, and Leo emerged from the passenger seat like an avenging angel. Maya had never seen him like this, his usual controlled demeanor replaced by something primal and deadly. His dark eyes blazed with fury as he took in the scene. "Let her go." Leo's voice was quiet, but it carried across the garage with unmistakable authority. "Leo Kang," the larger man said, though he didn't release Maya. "We were just having conversation with your wife. I can see that." Leo moved closer, his hands loose at his sides, but Maya could see the coiled tension in his body. "And now the conversation is over." "Victor sends message," the man continued. "You have something that belongs to him. He wants it back." "Victor can go to hell," Leo replied conversationally. "Now let go of my wife before I lose what's left of my patience." The men exchanged glances, clearly weighing their options. They were outnumbered now. Leo's men had emerged from the other vehicles, surrounding them with professional efficiency. "This is not over," the larger man said finally, releasing Maya's arms. "Yes," Leo said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "It is." Maya stumbled forward, and Leo caught her, his arms wrapping around her protectively. She could feel the rapid beat of his heart, the barely controlled violence thrumming through his body. The Russians retreated, but not before the larger man called out, "Pretty wife, Leo. Be shame if something happened to her." Leo's entire body went rigid. "Chen," he said quietly to one of his men, "follow them. I want to know where they go, who they talk to, what they eat for breakfast." "Yes, sir." As the garage emptied, leaving them alone with Leo's remaining security, Maya finally allowed herself to shake. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her weak-kneed and overwhelmed. "Are you hurt?" Leo's hands moved over her arms, checking for injuries with gentle thoroughness. "I'm okay," Maya managed, "just scared." Leo's jaw tightened. "This shouldn't have happened." "You shouldn't have been alone." "Leo, what's going on? Who is Victor really, and what does he want from you?" Leo was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. "Not here," he said finally. "We'll talk at home." The ride back to Beacon Hill was tense and silent. Leo sat beside Maya in the back of the SUV, his hand covering hers, but his attention was focused on his phone as he made a series of calls in rapid Korean. Maya caught enough to understand that he was mobilizing resources, calling in favors, preparing for war. Back at the penthouse, Leo poured himself a scotch and offered Maya a glass of wine, which she accepted gratefully. They sat in the living room, the afternoon sun streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, making the morning's events feel surreal. "Viktor Petrov runs the Russian operations in Boston," Leo began, his voice carefully controlled. "Drugs, weapons, human trafficking, anything that makes money and destroys lives. And you're in business with him?" Maya's voice was smaller than she'd intended. I was. My father's organization had arrangements with the Russians. When I inherited his operations, I inherited those relationships. Leo took a long sip of scotch. But I've been systematically cutting ties with anyone involved in trafficking. It's a line I won't cross. So you're really... Maya couldn't finish the sentence. A criminal? Yes. Leo's smile was bitter, though I prefer to think of myself as someone who operates outside traditional legal frameworks. Maya processed this, thinking about the man who'd held her so gently while cleaning his bloodied knuckles, who'd protected her without hesitation in the parking garage. What does Victor want from you? Control of the port operations. It's worth millions annually, and it's the key to his expansion plans. Leo set down his glass, turning to face her fully. Maya, I need you to understand something. This marriage was supposed to keep you safe. Anonymous. But Victor knows about you now, which means I'm a target, Maya finished. Yes. The word was heavy with guilt and regret. I'm sorry. I never intended for you to be in danger. Maya stood and walked to the windows, looking out over Boston Common. Below, people went about their normal lives, unaware of the dangerous games being played in the shadows above them. My grandmother is getting better, she said quietly. The treatment is working. Maya, I could leave, she continued, not turning around. Take the money you've already paid me and disappear. Start over somewhere else. The silence behind her stretched so long that Maya finally turned around. Leo was standing now, his expression raw with an emotion she'd never seen before. Is that what you want? He asked, his voice rough. Maya looked at this man who'd married her for convenience, who'd protected her without question, who was offering her an escape from a danger she'd never asked for. She thought about the way he'd held her in the garage, the gentleness in his hands when he tended to her grandmother during his one visit to the hospital, the way her heart raced every time he said her name. I don't know, she whispered, and realized it was the truth. The decision was taken out of Maya's hands 3 days later, when her grandmother collapsed during a routine treatment session. Maya received the call while she was having lunch with Leo's security detail, a new reality since the parking garage incident. We need to get to the hospital, Maya told Chen, her voice tight with panic. Now. Leo met them at Mass General, arriving just as Maya was speaking with Dr. Patterson about her grandmother's condition. Evelyn had suffered a severe reaction to the experimental treatment, and her body was struggling to recover. How bad is it? Leo asked quietly, his hand finding Maya's as they stood outside the ICU. They don't know yet, Maya whispered, watching through the glass as machines monitored her grandmother's vital signs. She's been fighting so hard, and now... Leo's arm came around her shoulders, pulling her against his side. She's strong, like you. She'll fight through this. They maintained vigil for 18 hours. Leo never left Maya's side, bringing her coffee, making sure she ate, handling the logistics that grief made impossible. When Dr. Patterson finally emerged with cautiously optimistic news, Evelyn had stabilized and was responding well to the adjusted treatment, Maya collapsed into Leo's arms and sobbed with relief. Take me home, she whispered against his chest. But home, Maya realized, wasn't the small house in Roxbury where she'd grown up. Home was wherever Leo was. That realization terrified her. Back at the penthouse, Maya stood in the shower, letting hot water wash away the hospital smell and the fear that had consumed her for nearly a day. When she emerged, she found Leo waiting in the living room, still wearing the same clothes from the day before, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. You should get some rest, Maya said, settling beside him on the couch. So should you. Leo's dark eyes searched her face. How are you holding up? Better now that I know she's okay. Maya tucked her legs under her, studying Leo's profile. You didn't have to stay with me all day. Yes, I did. The certainty in his voice made her heart skip. Maya, we need to talk about what happens next. I know. Maya took a deep breath. Victor isn't going to give up. No, he's not. And as long as you're married to me, you're in danger. Leo turned to face her fully. I've made arrangements. There's a house in Portland, completely secure. New identity, enough money to start over. You could be there by tomorrow night. Maya felt something crack inside her chest. You want me to leave? I want you to be safe. Leo's voice was rough with emotion. I want you to have the life you deserve, not one shadowed by my choices. And what about our arrangement, the contract? Leo ran his hands through his hair, his composure finally cracking. Maya, don't you understand? You married a cold Korean mafia boss just for a contract, never imagining I'd fall this hard for you. But I have. I've fallen so completely that the thought of losing you is destroying me. Maya's breath caught at the raw vulnerability in his voice, the way he'd laid his heart bare. Leo. I love you, he continued, his voice breaking. I love your strength, your compassion, the way you see good in people who don't deserve it. I love how you bandaged my wounds without judgment, how you stood up to Victor's men without backing down. I love that you chose to stay when any sane person would have run. Maya stood abruptly, pacing to the windows. The city sparkled below them, beautiful and dangerous, and full of possibilities. What if I don't want to leave? The silence behind her was deafening. When she turned around, Leo was staring at her with an expression of such raw hope and fear that it took her breath away. Maya. Her name was a prayer on his lips. What if I want to stay and fight? She continued, moving closer to him. What if I want to be here, with you, whatever comes next? Leo stood slowly, as if afraid sudden movement might shatter the moment. This isn't a fairy tale. My world is violent, unpredictable. People I care about get hurt. People I care about are already hurt, Maya replied, thinking of her grandmother's frail form in the hospital bed. At least here, I'm fighting for something that matters. What are you saying? Maya reached up to cup his face, feeling the slight roughness of stubble beneath her palms. I'm saying that you're right. I married a cold Korean mafia boss just for a contract, never imagining he'd fall hard for me. But I never imagined I'd fall just as hard for him. Leo's control finally snapped. He pulled her against him, his mouth finding hers in a kiss that was nothing like their sterile wedding ceremony. This kiss was desperate, hungry, full of months of suppressed longing and the terror of almost losing each other. I love you too, she whispered against his lips. God help me. I've loved you since that night you came home bleeding and let me take care of you. But Leo, if you stay, we face whatever comes together. Leo's voice was steady, certain. But I need to know something first. Are you ready for what that means? Really ready? Tell me. It means I'm going to end Victor permanently, and it means accepting that this life, our life, will always have shadows. There will always be people who see you as my weakness, who think they can use you against me. Maya thought about this, weighing the implications. What if we could minimize the risk? What if there was a way to take down Victor without making more enemies? What are you thinking? I still have contacts at the hospital, people who work with law enforcement on trafficking cases. What if the evidence against Victor came from multiple sources? What if it looked like his own paranoia and mistakes led to his downfall? Leo stared at her, admiration and love warring in his expression. You're talking about an elaborate deception. It would require perfect timing, multiple moving pieces. It would require trust, Maya interrupted, between us and in the people we choose to help us. For a long moment, Leo said nothing. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Chen, I need you to set up a meeting with Detective Morrison. Tell him I have information about the Petrov organization. Yes, I know what I'm asking. Tomorrow night. As Leo outlined their plan over the next hour, Maya felt a strange sense of rightness settle over her. This wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was the life she'd chosen. And she was choosing it with a man who'd proven he would protect her with his life, who'd shown her a love she'd never thought possible. Are you sure about this? Leo asked as they finalized the details. Once we do this, there's no going back to our separate lives. Maya smiled, thinking about how far they'd come from that sterile contract signing. Leo, I haven't wanted to go back to my separate life for months. The question is, are you ready for a real marriage? Not a contract, not an arrangement, a partnership. Leo's answer was another kiss, this one soft and full of promise. I've been ready since the day you walked into my office and challenged me with those beautiful, fearless eyes." "Good," Maya whispered against his lips, "because Viktor Petrov is about to learn that he picked the wrong couple to threaten." The next evening, as they prepared to set their plan in motion, Leo caught Maya's hand as she reached for her coat. "Maya," he said, his voice serious, "whatever happens tonight, I need you to know you saved me. Not just from Victor, not just from the loneliness. You saved me from becoming someone I wouldn't have been able to live with." Maya rose on her toes to kiss him softly. "We saved each other. That's what real partners do." As they walked out into the Boston night hand in hand, Maya felt the weight of the wedding ring on her finger, no longer a symbol of a business transaction, but a promise of the life they were building together. Years later, Maya would look back on that night as the moment their real life began. Viktor Petrov's arrest made headlines for weeks, a massive federal investigation that unraveled his entire organization. The evidence had come from multiple sources, as they'd planned, making it impossible to trace back to any single informant. Leo's legitimate businesses flourished as he distanced himself completely from his father's criminal legacy. He established the Evelyn Robinson Foundation for Cancer Research, named after Maya's grandmother, who lived to see her granddaughter truly happy. The penthouse in Beacon Hill became a real home, filled with laughter and love and the chaos of the life they built together. Maya returned to nursing, specializing in oncology, while Leo discovered he had a talent for philanthropy that rivaled his business acumen. "Do you ever miss it?" Maya asked one evening as they watched the sunset over Boston Common. "The excitement? The danger?" Leo pulled her closer on the couch, his hand resting on her rounded belly where their first child grew. "I have all the excitement I can handle right here," Maya laughed, thinking about how much their lives had changed since that desperate day when she'd walked into his office. "Your mother called today. She's flying in next week to help with the nursery. She's still convinced you're too good for me," Leo said with a smile. "Smart woman." Maya turned in his arms, looking into the dark eyes that had first seemed so cold and unreadable. Now she could see everything in them: love, contentment, and the promise of forever. "I love you, Mrs. Kang," Leo whispered, his hand moving to cover hers on her belly. "I love you too, Mr. Kang." Maya's smile was radiant. Contract fulfilled. Leo's laugh was warm and free, the sound of a man who'd found his home in the most unexpected place. Outside, Boston glittered in the twilight. But inside their penthouse, two hearts beat in perfect synchronization. No longer bound by contracts or convenience, but by a love that had transformed them both.